Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Walk the Dog Cinema. I am Roka, your loyal host to discussions about movies and somewhat movie reviews, but really just a way to talk about cinema, what's going on in cinema. And today we're going to talk about the horror movie Good Boy. Interesting film. It did not. It's kind of weird. I can't sit there and say I disliked it. It's just that maybe my expectation of the film, or what I heard about it, or reading the synopsis and my thoughts on it, were not met in the film. Doesn't inherently mean that the film's not a good movie. There's a little bit of repetition. It is a short film. It's only like an hour and 10 minutes long, hour and 15. And it does move pretty quick. I'm always a sucker for movies starring a dog, and Indy in this is an amazing dog actor. I heard it took 3 years. It's the director's dog, and Indy does a fantastic job conveying emotion, or just doing what a dog needs to do. And obviously all movies like this kind of give dogs an even little bit more human element. I wish movies kind of leaned into that a little bit more, just because, and this one kind of maybe needed that a little bit more. But you know, when I thought of a supernatural horror movie starring a dog, you know, your thought process goes one way, and the movie is about basically like lung cancer taking over a human, and how does the dog respond to it, and the supernatural element is death coming for him. So it's more cerebral in that sense. It does the whole, you know, how do dogs recognize things, looking at corners where nothing's there, barking at stuff that we humans don't see, but obviously they sense more than. And that's where I mean the movie needed to really lean into that. I think there's times that it's too passive, especially with the dog, and by about 45 minutes into the movie, when you only have about half hour left to go, it kind of dawns on you that possibly the supernatural stuff really isn't happening. It's the dog's interpretation of his human's illness, and there's a lot of clues to that. And so really discussing the movie from here on out, there's spoiler alerts, just because I don't think you can have a conversation about this movie without spoiling it, so to speak. So so we're gonna get into that, and just kind of go over what worked and didn't work, and what I mean, you know, we talk about expectations, and then the state of where horror movies are, and just movies in general, because this movie really brought that up a lot in me. So let's get to it. You know, it's interesting because this movie brought up a lot of like thoughts about film, and you know, we have quite a interesting summer where a lot of movies are bombing, the big tentpole movies. You know, we don't get our traditional action films. We'll see what Christopher Nolan's Odyssey does. It'll probably do pretty good. He's not inherently box office poison, though there is quite a bit of backlash on that film just because of the casting. But I'm not a big Christopher Nolan fan. I do love his Memento. Since then, I'm gonna be honest, I'm partial to Batman Begins, but not the other Batman films. I mean, the third one's, finishes is okay. Though I think Heath Ledger does a great job as Joker, I am just not into that Batman movie. there's a lot of wonkiness in it, and it, to me, does the cardinal sin of tells you, then shows you, and then tells you and shows you, and it kind of gets wrapped up into that, and it's a 2.5 hour slog of you telling me something, and then you show exactly what you just told me, and that drives me nuts as a viewer. I wouldn't say it's a pet peeve. It's just I feel like it insults my intelligence in that sense. So, whether that's an ego or whatever you may want to call it, let me pick it up, and I think that movie would have worked better. But anyhow, I'll watch a Christopher Nolan movie in the sense, because like I said, I love Memento, and I love supporting original ideas. And Inception was a little overblown. Wasn't a bad film, but again, it also suffers at times from over explaining things. And I've kind of watched all his films, just none of them like particularly stand out. But it's kind of like Peele, I'll watch their films because they're original, whether they get bad reviews or good reviews right now, because supporting originality is kind of important to show that, whether it's streaming or going to the theater or anything like that. We can get away and kind of train Hollywood to get away from the remakes, and not that Hollywood doesn't do that stuff. I'm just saying that they've done it to the end of time. But unless a remake a la like Moana, which just blew up and didn't do anything, which doesn't surprise me one least, because it's a movie that doesn't need to exist, especially when it's shot for shot with a movie that's like 10 years old, and even at that wasn't one of Disney's best in that regard. But and then you get the principal voice actor for it. What a mess. Well, anyhow, besides Toy Story 5, it been kind of a cruddy summer, except for horror movies. And Hollywood's always had that with horror movies. And, Good Boy is kind of part of that lexicon. And it's always amazing how horror movies have always kind of saved Hollywood. You look at, you can think of like sci-fi too, but, that kind of genre, I think it's because you can make it for very cheap. You inherently don't have a lot of remakes. Even John Carpenter's The Thing or any kind of remake touches it a little bit differently, just because of the genre, so to speak. And I've always been partial to horror. It's the one genre that is kind of my true love in film and cinema. I've seen practically, I wouldn't say it's not hard to find a horror film that I haven't seen that I want to see in that sense. I'm just saying that, like, all the big ones I've watched. So when I pick up books about horror movies or this and movies you need to see, you could have 1,000 in there and 990 of them I've seen, and I'll find the 10 that, oh, hey, I haven't heard of that one. But it's very hard to find those, that's why I love Tubi, because they seem to have horror films that obviously I have to kind of do more international. I've heard of them, but haven't really seen them because hard to get a hold of, or they're just inherently, they're not American made in that sense. But that's my journey into horror. I love horror. And so, Good Boy, in that sense, it's right up my alley. I've been wanting to see it. I think underneath the layers, I love the originality. I think it's a good movie. I think it's marketed in a really horrible manner. It kind of sets up expectations that the movie cannot deliver on, and that's too bad. In the one sense, like I said, the once I got to the point of what the movie was about, my thoughts changed on it, and obviously it got me thinking about all this kind of stuff. And yes, I do walk and think about like certain things like this. I've always been a kind of a movie buff, kind of got in the industry and did some stuff in it and then got out of it. But that doesn't mean my love of film never was there. It's just it's kind of a hobby I didn't want to inherently destroy, and wanted to spend time with my children. And it is a industry that you have to have a strong partner, which I do have. It's just you were going to give up a lot, and I wasn't willing to give that up. So, on that level, it's an interesting industry in that regard. But, you do a lot of work to make a movie, and, to prep it and do all these things. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting because it's hard work, but it's not like the blue collar work, right? It's very creative and all that. And kind of like Denzel says, you're making a movie. So it's a strange thing. But anyhow, I digress. Good Boy, because of those expectations or what you think of the movie, and then you get to the real basis of it, it really suffers because the owner, Todd, who owns Indy, we're seeing him at the tail end, and again, big spoiler stuff, of his disease. He's kind of an a-hole, and they have a couple little moments where he treats Indy good, but he really doesn't. And as a dog owner myself, you kind of sit there and you don't have sympathy for the guy. So here he's got this lung disease. He's coughing up blood. He even coughs it up on Indy, which is kind of a heartbreaking scene in one sense, because as again a dog owner, you're putting your own emotion on it, and it's kind of harrowing. And I don't know why the director decided not to really show the actor's face. Obviously, Indy's looking right at him. He knows who his owner is. I don't know why we don't get to know the owner, even though it's from Indy's perspective, because he's not faceless, and he's not faceless to Indy. So it's a really bizarre choice. It's clearly a choice because the movie is shot that way. I don't know if it's because it took 3 years and they used stand-in actors, maybe because the actor couldn't always be there. But it's kind of, that part of it is a bizarre choice because we don't really connect with Todd. We don't see why Indy would even connect with him. And what I mean, I get dogs connect with all sorts of people, but in this instant, we kind of don't get it because Indy is made rather humanish in that regard. And sadly, that connection is missing. It needed to be built deeper. I get they went for realism. When you read about some of the cancer treatments and stuff, Todd kind of reacts realistically. But the flip side is we just do not connect with him, and he's just kind of a jerk. So again, big spoiler, he dies at the end, and it's a harrowing thing. And he releases Indy, and unlike his because there's illness throughout his family and they all die of this cancer, it's kind of implied it's the house, but it's not, because he got it before he went to the house. And so some of the mythology in there is red herring and wonky, and like I said, it's kind of ambiguous with what the disease is, but it's pretty much lung cancer. But how we piece it together, because it's done from the perspective of the dog, it leaves a lot of stuff ambiguous. So we can kind of interpret that the supernatural elements of this movie aren't really happening, though there's people kind of stating it does. But within the film, the mythology of it is kind of shot to hell. So it's really just kind of death knocking at your door, and that's the supernatural part of it. And so I'm admit, I didn't want anything really bad to happen to Indy. It's really, it's, if you've ever seen the original Benji, the ending when the little dog gets kicked is probably one of the most harrowing things ever put on film. Watched tons of horror movies, but that moment is just, I've seen people lose their breath or have just a strong visceral reaction. And this movie plays that really well within the horror. We don't want to see the dog get hurt, and it's put in a few situations, but then you realize that it's kind of phony. So and like I said, it is intense, so it's not a bad made movie. I would say see it for yourself. Just know the expectation is that it's not inherently a supernatural film. It is scary, and it's, and they play up. But once you kind of realize that Indy is not in any real danger, the movie kind of loses its momentum. And yeah, you can rest easy. Indy isn't gonna die, and that's good. But the movie kind of loses its steam, and a lot of people talked about the repetition of it. And I think once you figure that out at the 45-minute mark or so, it does kind of become repetitive, because Indy just kind of keeps seeing death coming whenever his owner's around. He kind of picked up already on it, and then it just kind of repeats it until we get to that moment, and it does lose its steam until the ending. And Indy goes off with Todd's sister. So you get it from Indy's standpoint in the one sense, but like I said, because they don't establish Todd very well, the ending doesn't resonate in the same manner that it should. Just maybe because the dog isn't a professionally trained dog, so to speak, it's the director's dog. That's why he shot it. I don't know, but it really pulls from it. Again, that's kind of the bad thing. It really needed to lean in and have moments where, when Todd's doing okay, it's establishing that relationship more. Gives a little montage when he's a puppy. Whoop-de-doo, we don't really see, Todd show the dog any kind of love. You pick up on it when the dog's left alone. Nothing really bad, supernatural ever happens. It's when Todd comes home or is around. And there's a little points that it plays that Indy doesn't recognize Todd because of the disease. That one, if you know dogs, I kind of call BS on that one. That's a little play with cinema magic. You keep it grounded real, and that's why I say you gotta step out. If you're gonna play with people's emotions a little bit like that, you gotta also play on the other edge of it. And the movie really fails because of Todd's relationship with the dog, because that's the only thing that binds this movie. So I think it deserves a watch. It's just kind of middling, but again, it's original. There's a great story underneath there that can be done. I'd love to see someone else kind of try a horror movie again with a dog as the center, and really like kind of go for the gusto and really make it a horror film, and play in that. It really does push our fears about our pets being injured and affected. And, it's a different kind of tension that you get from a horror film. And yes, I get a lot of people won't see it because of that. And I'm fully okay with that in that sense. I'm just saying that from an originality idea, it's a great idea. The execution's kind of in the middle for me. I wouldn't say it's a movie that I just would inherently watch down the line like I would with Sinners or Weapons or Barbarian down, like I said, with horror movies, we got Obsession, Smile. I mean, horror's never been healthier. You had your lull, late 90s because of Scream, where everything just kind of got meta, to, kind of when they started doing the Texas Chainsaw remakes and Friday the 13th, and Michael Bay got his hands in there doing Michael Bay stuff to horror films. And that's kind of where horror kind of went to the wayside, right? It kind of, and the other side is we got some great superhero films and some other films that were truly fantastic. But it seems like the action genre is kind of dead. You just get superhero films, and when that isn't, horror movies take off. So I'm always happy to see horror films saving Hollywood. So and this was the start of it last year, in this movie getting a lot of pub. I'm glad I watched it, but it's middling at best. So take it what you will. Let me know in the comments what you think of Good Boy. And if you like what you see, please subscribe. Have a good one, everyone.